Today we are going to study and discuss a few poems on the theme of war. Now, the history of wars seems to be as old as the history of civilization itself, and there are also literary works found in all societies on the theme of war. The most famous epic in Europe, the Iliad, is about the war between the Greeks and the Trojans. In our own country, the ancient epic, the Mahabharata, even though it is about many other things, is generally known as an account of the war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, which is believed to have taken place more than 2000 years ago. Apart from these, there have been a lot of other works on a smaller scale: poems, plays, novels, and also prose pieces, which have dealt with the theme of war. These have dealt with various aspects of wars, their causes, their conduct, and their consequences. However, we can divide all these works broadly into two kinds. One, those that celebrate war and present war heroes and their heroic deeds as acts of patriotism and nationalism and bravery. And two, those works that condemn wars directly or indirectly, bringing out the disaster and devastation that they cause in the lives of individuals as well as societies as a whole. Quite often, the same literary work, for example, the Mahabharata itself, may do both these things, that is, celebrate as well as condemn wars. We are now going to look at a few poems in English language as examples of both these kinds. All these poems were written during the First World War, which, as you all know, lasted 4 years, from 1914 to 1918. First, let us read a poem called "The Soldier." Before we read the poem, shall we learn something about the poet? The author, Rupert Brooke, who was born in 1887, was the son of a housemaster in a famous public school called Rugby. He attended the same school and was both a scholar and a handsome young athlete. He later studied at King's College, Cambridge, where he made an impression as an intellectual, taking part in literary activities, discussions, and getting to know the famous literary figures of his times. After his college education, Rupert Brooke went on a tour of the continent and the South Seas. A few months after his return to England in 1914, he enlisted in the British Royal Navy. He saw some action abroad, but died of a fatal illness the very next year, that is 1915, while on a ship. He was buried in a Greek island called Skyros, where a grave was built for him, and the grave exists even now. Shall we now read the poem "The Soldier"? If I should die, think only this of me, that there is some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roam, a body of England's, breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by sons of home. And think this heart all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less gives somewhere back the thoughts by England given. Her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learnt of friends, and gentleness in hearts at peace under an English heaven. What is the poem about? The poem visualizes a possibility and expresses a wish. The possibility, if I should die, is that he may die while performing his duties as a soldier on some foreign soil, in some country away from his home country, England. He says that when that happens, that corner will be forever England, because he, an Englishman, is buried there. The rich earth of that place will become richer because a richer dust will be concealed in that soil. We immediately see the biblical echo here about the origin and end of all human life. Dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. That biblical saying generally is taken to de-glamorize human life. Whatever pride we may feel about our lives, however important we may feel about ourselves, it is after all dust that we shall return to when we die. But here the poet talks about a rich dust, the foreign soil, and a richer one, which the speaker represents. The speaker then remembers how England bore him and shaped him, his body, his mind, made aware his sensations and finer feelings, roaming her ways, loving her flowers, breathing her air, washed by England's rivers, and blessed by the English sun. And coming now to the second stanza, even as he lies dead and buried on a foreign soil, he lies there as an immortal soul rather than as a body. What does he do now? He gives out, gives back what England had given him, the smells, sights, and sounds of England. In other words, all his memories of his native land, the laughter he shared with his friends, the love he received from his people, are now, and even the dreams he dreamed, are now preserved in his tomb along with his body. And they will be seen and heard and felt every time his tomb is visited. What is the most striking note of the poem? It is the speaker's strong sense of patriotism, his intense love of his country. How do we know this? Just look at the number of times he names his country. In this short poem, there are 3 times that the word England occurs, and it occurs in its possessive form, England's, once, and in its adjectival form, English, once. His body is England's body. He breathed English air under an English heaven. The speaker also feels and expresses a kind of gratitude to his country for all that it has given him, for all the blessings he has received from it. Moreover, it's not just love of his country that the speaker feels. He has the conviction that his country, his homeland, is great. Certainly, it is greater than other countries. Certainly greater than the foreign soil where he may breathe his last. This conviction